we're using this word bridging, and it sounds like as if these two words, digital art and traditional art, are mutually exclusive, whereas it's not. I mean, it's just art. It's just like a different medium. And
fortunately, there's two very different worlds now. The traditional art world and the crypto world are two parallel lines, and unfortunately, they rarely cross.
All champagne is sparkling wine, not all sparkling wine is champagne. And that's exactly the case with NFTs. So anything can be an NFT, not every NFT is art.
Hi everyone, we're super honored to have Andrea, Kenny, and Mimi back on an episode of NEWFORUM Community Forum series. NEWFORUM is a community podcast that invites purpose-driven creators, visionaries, developers, and investors to spark accessible conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFT, and everything Web3.
And a bit about our special guests on today's forum. We have Andrea, who is a crypto collector and entrepreneur in the digital art and NFT space, focusing on innovative ways to experience and create digital art. Then we have Kenny, who is a veteran dealer, artist, writer, collector, curator, you name it. And Kenny discusses his involvement in the art market, his foray for NFTs, and Web3 culture on a previous NEWFORUM episode. And then we also have Mimi Nguyen. He's the R&D lead at Mana Search and the co-founder of Nguyen Wahed. She's also a lecturer at Imperial College London and innovative lecturer at Centre St. Martin's, University of Arts London.
Thank you all for joining us. The last time we spoke individually, and today we're super excited to hear what has changed in the NFT art market space since we last spoke. And maybe we could dive a bit deeper into the current state of NFT and crypto art world. So maybe we can start with you, Mimi, and then Andrea, and then go to Kenny just to hear what's been going on, what has changed since we last spoke.
Okay, so I'm the first one. Thanks for having us. It's amazing to reconnect. It's amazing to see Kenny again. We had this conversation, which I had literally last week when I was in New York. And I was sharing a lot of my frustrations about the space and the changes that I was observing. So, yeah, I mean, I think that what is happening right now is that the official stats are that the NFTs traffic is down 99%. And this is just very interesting to observe right now for all of us involved, because it's also the moment when a lot of bad projects will be filtered out. And I'm very excited and looking forward to that. I see a lot of movement in big institutions and academic institutions, especially where they're involving more into the conversations about NFTs. I can see that within my students as well. When we started last year, 0% of the students were interested in blockchain and NFTs, and now I can see them applying for internships to companies like The Fabricant or Ledger, and they can see that they can graduate an art university and see a career in still big companies like Balenciaga and or Gucci, but work within the Web3 space. What fascinates me right now is to see how the bridge between the traditional art world and the NFT art will happen. We were seeing a lot of drops from contemporary artists of NFTs, and I think it's just the beginning. It's very interesting to see how this will pan out over the next years.
Maybe Andrea, you can go, and then Kenny.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me back, and it's great to be here with all of you. So I think in the last few months, we've seen a lot of very interesting things happen. And I think that even though the numbers seem to be very alarming and everything, I think that it's always good, right? So we have a market that was not sustainable. Now we are kind of getting to the point where you couldn't keep on going up and up and up and up. So it had to go to a point where it became the market cleaned itself up, and you also started looking further into the history of what it was that the space was about. All the pioneers, like I feel like they've been receiving more recognition that they had deserved for a long time. It was long overdue. Talking about, like, for example, Vera Molnar, it's been really exciting to see her in so many participating in the Biennale and in other shows. So I think that right now the market is in a very interesting stage, right? Because at a point it started that most platforms were doing something similar. Most, like, it was just kind of like a pattern repeating itself that was not going to be sustainable for a long time. And now with the market being down, you get all the people that are really not ready to innovate and not ready to keep on cleaning up. And that, yes, brings the numbers down and alarms some people, and I get not great for it in general, but then it'll restructure. Like, people will rethink what is really happening, what is really needed, how can you move forward, because that's what this industry is all about. You have technology as a tool to keep on building, and I think that from this moment is where the most innovative things start to happen, because people are starting to find ways to keep on going through the market, even if it's rough, and it gives people a moment to sit down and think and get off the hype and really see what's happening, what's needed, what they can create. And it's a moment that I think creativity and innovation can really push forward.
Okay, now we want to know, Kenny, your thoughts on this.
Well, I always say that 1 year in technology space is like dog years. It's like 15 years in real life. So, I mean, look, we're in the middle of Ethereum 2 merge as we speak. There's always a lot of change. Change is good. Change is what this is all about. And there's always going to be good and bad. I mean, I coined this term NFTism, which was about people, disparate people like all of us. Thanks for having me again. All of us getting together, meeting people, like-minded people, forging relationships, and people working together and collaborating. Things quickly devolve. I mean, basically, over the course of 2 years, you have the entire span of what's transpired in the traditional art world in the last 25 years has occurred in the NFT space in the last 2 years. So it went from excitement, innovation, collaboration, generosity of spirit to criminality, scams, and excessive speculation. So like Mimi said, and Andrea as well, I mean, I just saw a famous investor, Warren Buffett, making a statement that his activities in life don't change regardless of what a present economic cycle is. I've been doing the same thing for nearly 35 years. Nothing will change if the Ethereum merge imploded and Ethereum evaporated and Bitcoin got sucked down with it. I could care less. Nothing would change from what I do on a day-to-day basis. As far as like NFT volume going down radically in terms of volume and overall values, it's irrelevant basically. But I think at the same time, I'm preparing for an exhibition, literally as we speak, I'm multitasking, at a museum in Zurich at the Kunsthalle, which will be 30 NFT artists. There's a book coming out with Tashin. There's many books coming out. There's many, the Museum of Modern Art just announced selling a collection that was loaned to them for $70 million to use the proceeds for the acquisition of digital art. And I think that there's a lot of catching up to do in the world, and in the art world in particular, with technology, with digital art. I don't even want to say NFTs, because NFTs are just a tool, smart contracts relating to digital art. And I think that there'll be more and more overlapping between creative people and institutions and entities, where digital art gets to achieve more of a position of parity in relationship to more traditional art forms like painting and sculpture and photography. So everything's happening and nothing's happening at the same time. And I welcome the change and innovation. It's the obligation of museums to collect this art. So it's happening, better late than never.
Kenny, from your perspective, first off, I want to know, like, have you been digging into other tech tools like AR, VR? Have you been experiencing more different ways of creating your art? And then secondly, do you think we are currently facing a renaissance in art, or are we repeating things again? That would be my next question for you.
That's not one question.
That's two questions. So
in terms of, I mean, for my installation, I'm deploying this holographic fan technology, and it's been utilized by artists in the past, like Rachel Rossin, for example, using a single fan to display a holographic effect image. It's not a holograph in the technical sense. But now there's new systems that have multiple fans that fragmentize and then resynchronize video information into something that's more. What I think is I've done a lot of research into the dedicated display of devices for digital art, because I think I'm surrounded by art. I have 2 screens and 100 sculptures, design elements, drawings, paintings surrounding me, enveloping me, I should say. It's sort of like a snapshot of my brain. But I think for digital art to truly achieve greater dissemination and acceptance and collectability, it has to be as easy to live with as a drawing. So I'm very interested, and I visited companies like Proto, companies like Looking Glass, companies that are creating the cutting edge technology to achieve 3D effects in video works. And that is most definitely affecting how I make work. I'm doing another project, which is like a conceptual video game with Data, a UK company. And that whole project will be rendered in Unity and in 3D. So I think very much so that I'm against experiencing art that alienates people from one another. So putting those dirty goggles on in the middle of COVID, which we still are most assuredly still deeply in, it just doesn't make sense. Art is not to be something that makes you leave your normal course of experiencing things. So I think that we need to achieve a greater moment of integration of digital art into our everyday lives. And then I don't want to take up all the time, but what was your latter part of your question?
My second part of the question was, do you think we are at a point of like an art renaissance?
Yeah, well, we've been in an we're always in an art renaissance. I wildly disagree with, when people will make comments like the art was much better in the 60s, the art was much better in the 80s. Art, there's more people making art, looking at art, writing about art, thinking about art. And because of digital art and NFTs in particular, there's more people consuming art, and more people are able to, this kind of breakdown between the artist and the audience is extraordinary to experience through Twitter, through Discord, through interacting where the artist and the ultimate buyers of the art, collectors, relate to each other in a direct fashion that never existed before. I've had situations where I sell art through one of my gallery situations, and I never even know who the buyer is of the art. And now when you sell an NFT, not only do you find out who the buyer is, but they demand a conversation with you. Oftentimes, if you're doing a larger project, they expect a lot more than a conversation, raffles, airdrops, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so I love it all. It's inspiring. I love to learn. I love to be challenged. And I think very much so we're in a renaissance of digital art. But again, no different from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when Vera Molnar, Herbert Franke, Gottfried, there's a whole host of the history of generative art dating back to the 50s and 60s. And this is just a more pervasive integration of these art forms. But surely mainly because of smart contracts and the development of NFT technology as a delivery system and a tool for digital art, and then the stupid reductive notion of one person's art, who I won't even say, selling for a pornographic amount of money. Well, as stupid as that is, it's awakened the world. Unfortunately, we live in a very mono-economical way with blinders on of people just relating to money. So when digital art fetches a lot of money, then everybody's interested. But it also trickles down and creates a lot of opportunities for people like myself who never was able to sell art before to this extent. Also, I love Tezos, and I got involved with Tezos late because I was just so busy getting my arms around Ethereum and learning more about the technology. But I've only been involved over the last couple of months on, a site like OBJKT, object.com, and working in the Tezos community has given me, it's re-inspired me and re-energized me post-NFTism, working and selling my art for 20 Tez to 200 Tez, which is a sweet spot on Object. the majority of which is bought and sold by artists buying the work of other artists, that's an extraordinary experience, and I absolutely love it. And I get the same joy as selling a piece for 20 Tez as I did for 20,000 US. So that's a really interesting innovation, and it instills hope in me that there's still a lot of great things to come.
Yes, totally. I think definitely there are a lot of great things to come. And back to you, Mimi. So the last time when you were on, there's a quote that I took notice of. You said, I do think there's I think I asked a question about students that you're working with. And then you answered and said, I do think there's some resistance. You would think they're curious about the space, but I do think it's quite shocking from my point of view. I do have some students at Central St. Martin's who are into NFTs and blockchain, but I would say that's still kind of maybe 5% and still struggling to really introduce this space to the art students. I am curious to know what has changed, and if something has changed, what caused that change to happen? I
think it changed slightly. I mean, in between there was summer, so I can't really say that. But as I said, after the end of the academic year, I did hear a lot of them apply to Web3 companies, and that was for me a little success because, as I said, it increased. Maybe at the point where we spoke was 5%. Now I would say 10 to 15, and for me that's a big step actually to change, because like in the academic world, to change a syllabus, a module, it takes years. In our case, it was 2 years. We're still in the process of changing that. But what I saw from the school and then from the university is that we are launching, and this is funny, like in the Web3, it sounds ridiculous, next year in January, a blockchain official course certified by University of Arts London. But it took a year to convince, the hierarchy in the university. And we're planning it now. And then, when I'm used to the Web3 jargon, I was like, okay, let's do it in October. And they're like, no, this is going to happen like in the next term. And it's quite funny to see like how the time is different and shrinking in Web3. And then also a bit referring to what Kenny said, the difference I think is like when I was in the art school and I was in something called new media department, it was basically everything that are the rejects of paintings and sculpture. So we were kind of like on a different campus, and it was digital art, performance, installations, photography at that stage as well, because like maybe in the Polish market, of course, if you do this stuff, it basically means that you can't really sell. You're not going to go to big galleries. And I don't think that nowadays, it's that bad to study digital art, especially like with this movement of NFTs that enabled people to be more brave to showcase their digital art. And I think that came also not only just from the NFTs, but just from us, like from how we consume stuff nowadays, the movement of shopping, e-commerce, and all of this. Like we are actually spending more time on our screens and actually looking at our walls. And I think that kind of also accelerated this adoption of digital art. And hopefully if we manage to see how we can showcase this stuff, which is still a struggle. So we did struggled at the university with how we, for the degree showcase our students' works that are digital. So like one of my students worked with DressX, and we really struggled to find projector screens and really make it look good. Whereas like, if you have a painting, you just hang a big 3-meter painting and it looks amazing, and then you can sell it for 10,000. So until we, can afford or also learn how to showcase this better, I think then we will bring collectors that will kind of spiral this whole movement. So I think that's amazing. Another thing that I wanted to refer to what Kenny said, it's this switch in consumption of editions. Like before that, I think it was quite undesirable to buy an edition as much as now in the NFT. It's kind of like we are okay to have an edition of 200 and buy something for 20 Tezos because it's about the support of other artists. And yeah, I think hopefully we'll learn also to buy prints more. I'm very excited for that. So I'm just looking forward to the next academic year.
I'm very excited to see what the students are going to come up with in fashion and art, and from St. Martin's, like if they take this course and if they are interested and more getting into the space, like what kind of innovation they come up with. Andrea, I want to know from you as a curator, you probably are hands-on with art and what is happening within the market, and I want to know what kind of change have you seen, as well as like, do you think that now galleries and museums are now integrating more and more NFTs? And I have a follow-up question after that. And I would just love to know, because I recently also been to the Tate Modern in London, and they had a virtual exhibition, and I was quite surprised how well it was designed. So I'm wondering what has changed for you. And then I go on to my next question.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when we started Kadaf with Elena, what our mission was to like show the wide range of digital mediums, because you can talk about NFTs, but that's just, as Kenny also said, a way of transactions. And what we were interested in doing was to explore like the different mediums. So like to really look at the different ways that artists can create, the different mediums that are used. So I think that during this time, we have looked back on a lot of that, and we've noticed that museums and other institutions are also very keen to get back to, okay, so it's not about just a hype. Let's look at what this really is. Let's look at the different mediums that there are. So I think that for us, we always think that a lot of digital art is better experienced in person, not just through your screen or through your phone, even though that's fine. But as both Mimi and Kenny also mentioned, that display of digital art has been one of the biggest challenges for mass adoption, because it is really hard to convince someone to have a screen or to make an exhibition and not make it look like a Best Buy or an Apple Store or something like that. And there's a huge opportunity for things in the display world to change. I think that they're changing. I think moving a little bit around formats and not making everything a rectangle is a start, like square frames are a good idea to include. And I think there's more coming up. So from a curatorial standpoint, I think that we're seeing even like artists thinking more about like what they are showing, and like, not that they didn't before, but they're really interested in showing their work and really interested in exploring new ways to display it. So we are going to be hosting the next Kadaf in New York, where we want to again present all the different mediums. So we want to really look at what's happening and have different focus sections so that we can present to the general public the wide range of mediums. I think that education is key right now. I think that we do live in a headline world, that people love headlines. And right now, the education for people that want to be involved or want to learn is key. So I think that is awesome, Mimi, that you're having a course in January. It's pretty close by, even though it sounds far away. It's not too far away. And education is key for new collectors, for artists that want to like switch mediums, that want to learn other mediums, workshops. We've noticed, for example, with the Digital Art Month, how many artists were interested in exploring augmented reality and creating artworks in augmented reality. So I think that there's still a lot of creativity, there's still a lot of energy. The community is amazing and it's still there. And we're just excited to be able and be along. And from our perspective, or at least mine, I think Kadaf in general, when we started Kadaf, it wasn't during the NFT boom. It was we started planning it in 2018, hosted the first one 2019, when things were it wasn't called NFTs, it was crypto art. And we had the most amazing community come together and show their projects and their artworks and everything that they've been experimenting. And it wasn't like things were selling for exorbitant amount of money, but people believed in it. And I think that the community is growing and it's so strong as it's always been.
Yeah, I love hearing from your perspective. My friend, we tried on these goggles and in the exhibition, and she was like, I don't really like it. And I was like, for me, it's interesting to just see new displayed ways of art. Like, how can you display an NFT? How can you create different kind of shows? And I think that's really interesting to see what you guys are coming up with as well with Kadaf. And now I have a question for for everyone, kind of. We want to know, like, what do you think is the future of the NFT value? Will it be about utility, collectability? Like, how do you see in the future NFTs change? I know there's also people trying to implement NFTs in events and all these kind of things. So I'm wondering, what are you guys' thoughts about like the next half a year to a year, what is going to happen in the NFT space? And maybe we can start with Mimi and then go around.
As usual, I'll just say something controversial, but I think that NFT is just a tool. It's just a mechanism, and it's not like, I mean, there is like specifically a genre NFT art, but I'm not going to go into that. So like there are people who are experimenting with art on chain. That's exciting. That's basically a new medium of art. Maybe one day we'll have in the art school like literally art on chain courses or departments. But just for now, I think in the medium term, short term, nothing will change. Just like Kina said, like it's just like it's something that in a cycle, and then the artwork is still the artwork. NFT for me is just a mechanism for distribution of art and provenance. And I hope that in the future, in the long term, we will see, and that depends on basically legislation, NFT being used for certification of authenticity and provenance of any sale history for even physical goods. That's maybe in 10 years, because I don't see a reason why, if anything is kind of optimized and will be able to use this technology in the right way, so like even power the financial transactions using blockchain, then there is no reason why we wouldn't do that. And so I think short term, nothing will change. Medium term, hopefully there will be some adoptions like certifications, even for CVs. I don't see a reason why people shouldn't use this technology to certify that someone worked somewhere, because at the end of the day, 80% of CVs are lies. And maybe you could have McKinsey, like, dropping your POAP that you actually worked there as this person at this position. And, it's kind of verifiable. And like that someone studied at this university. That's just a very great tool, I think, to record a history of anything. And it could be used for digital art, because right now it's a no-brainer, but it could possibly be used for physical assets if, again, I said, the registration parts is sorted. And that's exciting, because we're basically using a technology to improve our lives, I think, through that. I'm not sure if the guys would agree with.
Maybe, Kenny, you could jump in.
Well, I think that was brilliant, actually. The only thing I would disagree with is that I think it's going to happen sooner than later. But I mean, that was a pretty profound statement that I really find to be incredible in relationship to, it's more like a blockchain synopsis of how our lives could be ultimately transform things to be more verifiable and add some degree of objectivity. I mean, I think with all of the criminality that we are experiencing in this, people say the art world is unregulated, but that's absurd. There's 165 different rules and regulations applicable to any given art transaction, but the crypto world is truly the land where it's like a state of nature, a feral land where anything goes. I always say a decentralized network of computers are not greedy and dishonest or effed up. It's people that are, and that's human nature. That's greed. These are disingenuousness. These are things that are so firmly rooted in our genetic makeup. I mean, what I would see in terms, again, of innovation in digital art, I think back to this display issue, I would say that in a few 2-3 years, I mean, right now, 3D monitors range from, I mean, you can get a teeny tiny one from Looking Glass for $400, but generally the prices are prohibitive, and they range from 20 to 60,000 on up, all the way up. And I think that in the future, hopefully the near future, you should be able to project a 3D image into your room in a very simple and accessibly affordable manner. The same way like Tupac Shakur went on concert, as far as I'm aware. He's still not with us, but this type of technology will go from exotic to accessible and domesticated. So that to me is exciting. And then, I mean, NFT art is the only people making NFT art are people like Raya Myers, who makes art with the smart contract as the content. That's NFT. Otherwise, NFTs are nothing. They're just, like Mimi said, a tool within which to buy and sell digital art or assets or collectibles. So anyway, I just think there's going to be definitely, I mean, I made a video a year ago or so, a year and a half ago, about people always talk about building a bridge between the traditional and the digital worlds, art worlds. And I say I'd rather blow it up than connect them. And I'm being facetious, of course, because I kind of am part of that bridge myself. But I just think I typically poke the bear a lot in my writing and my practice by just expressing my opinions, which is unfortunately rare in the art world. But I think people will just shut up for 5 minutes fighting. Now the merge is happening, so the environmental critique is going to evaporate. And I'm just sick and tired of, like, people are scared of change. We live in a universe rife with change. Some of it good, much of it not good. But there's a lot of good that comes from crypto. There was, like, in relationship to Ukraine, for instance, there was a lot of charitable initiatives that instantaneously raise money for a great cause without bureaucracy. And these things of just giving you the tools at your fingertip. Social media was a revolution for artists expressing themselves, but there was still, you had to rely on these old-fashioned systems within which to transact. And the blockchain and NFTs have gone a long way into resolving or ameliorating some of the disparities with artists gaining access. And I want to see more humanistic efforts of generosity, sharing, collaborating, and working together for people to be able to do what they want to do without hurting other people or breaking the law.
I wanted to add something. I think it will relate to what Andrea is doing, because, like, we're using this word bridging, and it sounds like as if these two words, digital art and traditional art, are mutually exclusive, whereas it's not. I mean, it's just art. It's just like a different medium, and it's like we're trying to bridge 5G and Wi-Fi, or, like, I don't know, 5G and fax machine. There's not something like that. You cannot really play music using Spotify and a DVD in the same, or like a CD in the same time. So it's I think a natural evolution, and then maybe Kadaf is doing that, as you said, like, quite early in 2018. But it is just an evolution, and the adoption will come later. And I don't think we should talk that these are two different words that, you know, we're trying to artificially now put together, because it's just like another step for me.
I mean, I could just say, just to follow, I mean, unfortunately, there's two very different worlds now. The traditional art world and the crypto world are two parallel lines, and unfortunately, they rarely cross. I think that in a very short period of time, once a Museum of Modern Art gets on board, I called Larry Gagosian 2 years ago and said, let me do an NFT show for you. And he just replied, I'm not that kind of gallery. And guess what he's showing in his gallery now? Urs Fischer NFTs. So all of these people, they're far from stupid, although the word idiot springs to mind. But these, I mean, I just think, like Mimi said, I care about art and my kids, and that's it. So I'm not technology for me is a cultural manifestation of human existence, creativity, and expression. And I think that these things people need to just relax and stop jumping to, like, you know, divergent, polarizing dissension and argumentation for the sake of rejecting, pushing back from stuff that they're unfamiliar with, and stop saying all NFTs suck, all crypto is illegal and criminal. All these, no art in NFTs. Just try looking. I mean, some of the most brilliant art ever made in history is being made this very second with a computer somewhere. Maybe not in my office, but somewhere not so far away, I would imagine. So people should just open their minds, open their ears, and mainly open their eyes and their minds to the innovations that are under our noses.
Andrea?
Yeah. So I think that it's a situation of, like, all champagne is sparkling wine, not all sparkling wine is champagne. And that's exactly the case with NFTs. So anything can be an NFT, not every NFT is art. So it's a way to think about it, and also to NFT, just a tool. It's just a tool attached. If they didn't serve the transactional purpose that they have, I don't think they would be needed. I don't think anyone, unless it's their medium that they're using, would be interested in using them. It's not the simplest process to go around. It's not the simplest process to build. And I think they serve a great purpose. They've served, and like this technology has served an amazing purpose. It still has a lot of room to grow. It still needs to be a lot more user-friendly. But I think that it serves different areas, right? So it's as if you said, like, video work for art, like video works for making ads, video works for making interviews. So I think it's more looking at it as a tool than actually a medium, unless the artist intends to use it as a medium. So digital art will keep growing, and the different mediums amongst digital art are still growing. I was just yesterday at the summit of Artivive about augmented reality, for example, and I love augmented reality. I think it's so amazing how you can transform your reality and at different layers of reality, and it brings so many opportunities. And they were talking about a lot of things that I hadn't even thought about, how it is now being used in the healthcare system for a lot of things. Like, it's bringing a lot of good and to the world. And I think so many of the mediums in digital art are still being explored and taken to new dimensions. But digital art, I think, is great. And I think that NFTs have just managed to serve a purpose on how to sell it, because artists were creating long before the NFTs came around. I think it's just gonna keep growing.
I have a quick question before my final question, and we can wrap up with that. So Andrea, you said not every NFT is art, pretty much, and it's just like a tool attached. And I think we all agree here so far from the conversation that NFT is just like a tool. So how does it sound when most artists would say, like, I'm an NFT artist, or someone will also say I'm a crypto artist? Like, what is the difference, and which one should be like the right way to say it? You know, saying that you're like a digital artist who is sort of like leveraging the blockchain technology and, you know, all of that. Like, how do you guys have any thoughts on that?
There is no right way. You're whatever you want to be. I mean, Jerry Saltz, who I love, writes a book about how to be an artist, the rules to be an artist. Besides the fact he's not one, there are no rules. There are artists like Kevin Abash that employed crypto technology before NFTs. He made art on the blockchain. If you make art with the blockchain as your medium, or the meaning, or your intent is to use the blockchain, then you're a crypto artist. It doesn't really matter. Artist is, let's just use the term artist. But I think Rhea Myers, like I mentioned before, she's one of the few in the world actual NFT artists, because she makes art, the content of which is comprised and characterized by characteristics of non-fungible tokens and all of their attributes. So none of this matters. Art is art. Everyone should just chill and embrace the great talents and creativity that surround us, and especially when they can be used for inspiration and for helping other people, whether they're students, whether they're people in need, whether they're used for charitable causes. But it's just another way for people to help people and people to coexist together.
Mimi and Andrea, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think there's one thing about this NFT that I really like. Yesterday I went to a live auction in Hausen and Wirth. It was in collaboration with hospital rooms and Bonhams. And it was so intimidating. Definitely, it was like my first live auction. And, you know, I could see when I was leaving the room that someone wanted to get into Hauser, and the guy was like, no, this is a private event. And that was like my understanding of the traditional art. But before NFT kind of came into my life, I was like, I really want to buy art, but I just don't know how, because it's so intimidating to go to a gallery, because they just look at you and they're trying to assess whether you're going to spend 50K or not. It's impossible to even think of going to Christie's and bid and raise your hand. And NFT kind of enabled, and including me, to, I don't know, look at the artwork before and decide in my kind of safe environment where I'm going to spend money or collect things or not. And I think it kind of like increased, you know, people who are interested in collecting. Of course, the flipping part comes over the last 2 years, but I think a lot of people who were flipping starting to now buy art that they're actually keeping, and they, you know, call themselves collectors, and they're really putting that into vaults and probably printing, hanging this out, or some of the collectors told me they would give it to the kids. And I think, yeah, there is a change that NFT as a tool just kind of like increased this adoption, and I think accelerated this adoption. I think that that's something that is beautiful, specifically thinking about the generational differences between, you know, how young people are collecting art. Like, we literally have people at the age of 19, 20 collecting NFTs, and you wouldn't think before that that's even possible. And I think that's something that will it's just good for art. The more people we have that collects, the better. So the good art will stay there. And that's something that I'm grateful for, this tool or this technology.
I think that is such a valid point. Like, usually you think about art collectors in the higher ages who, have reached a certain step in their career, and now you have this technology, and like you said, you can look at the work at home. You can really invest your time at home and think about what kind of art you want to buy, and you're not that intimidated of going there. Or I think that's really powerful for people who want to collect art, and that's a really good point, I think.
Yeah, and I think maybe I can go ahead with my last question and my curiosity, I'd say. What do you think about artists collaborating with AI?
I love AI, everything that has been made, and I think it gets a bad rap, like sometimes within the more traditional art world, because it's all lack of understanding and more education needed. More like I think that people don't look at enough art, like they say, oh, this and like that, they made their decision. No, I think people need to look at art. They need to understand that it's not something that appeared out of the blue, that NFTs are not something that just magically popped up. Like, there's been something behind each of these ones going on for a very long time, and there's a history and everything. And I love AI, and I think that it's going to keep on going and getting more interesting. We started since very early on with Kadav, with, for example, Sofia Crespo, that she was creating like this beautiful artworks, and I remember like her explaining the process to us. And once you understand that, you see the beauty in it. That's my opinion.
I mean, when I think about AI and DALL-E and all of that stuff, I mean, I think about Marcel Duchamp and the ready-made. And I made a piece back in the mid-90s, which was Marcel Duchamp with the text, "I am not a role model," where I think there was a whole hell of a lot of exploitation and strategic usage without much forethought in relationship to utilizing ready-made pre-existing stuff or assisted ready-mades or whatever. And I think, again, like with AI, it could be easily dismissed as the lazy person's tool to stick a couple of words into a program and spit out an image, and then you're an artist. And again, it's just a tool. You can't deny it. It exists. Is it not art? No. Is it art? No. It depends what you do with it. It could be used to make masterpieces. It will be used to make masterpieces. Will it replace artists? I mean, there's nothing artificial about artificial intelligence. It takes a human being to input the parameters within which to constitute an image. I think that with a program like DALL-E is another version of censorship in the way of someone who owns a lot of media platforms, which I can't stand or tolerate. But if you're going to have AI programs that are already prophylactically censored, then you're not going to have art, or you're going to have a certain quality and variety of art that isn't representative of the full spectrum of the human condition. So AI is great, but tools should not be, they're being programmed by people, and they're being inputted with imagery that the parameters of which are way too restrictive right now, if you ask me. If an artist uses and develops their own AI, that's much better, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Sofia Crespo is developing her algorithm, and that's why her art is slightly different than someone just putting stuff in DALL-E. And I mean, she's been doing that for years and years, and that's why she's so strong in that, because again, she's like a very trained artist who have seen every possible output of the AI, and she's able to, with the artistic view and creativity, choose the one that she actually wants to put out. My only interest, like recently, about creativity over the last few years is that our research at Imperial, because I'm in the design engineering department, so we look specifically into creativity, and a lot of researchers in the design studies are looking into AI boosting creativity, or like if AI can be more creative or help designers, be more creative. And I think that it comes from a very alarming lack of understanding, like what is AI actually, because it sounds amazing that it's artificial intelligence, but it's exactly like Kenny said, it's being trained by people, and it's being trained by a particular set of data. So depending on what we feed the algorithm, the output will be like that. If you feed less data, it'll be less complex and less sophisticated. If we have Google databases, the data set is basically everything around us, everything that we're being tracked around, and the results can be more inspiring, satisfying, or I don't know, inspirational. But I think it kind of goes against this thinking of like thinking out of the box, because we are now using a tool that is pre-trained by existing data sets of information and data, and we're basing this creativity on that. So basically it is like learnings from previous outputs, and it's hard to think that then this is something that will help us think out of the box, because everything that is going to develop is based on historical data. So I think that's something that is very something that I'm very curious about. I'm not saying it's bad or not, but I think that we should just be careful about thinking that AI will solve all our problems.
But I think if I may add something, it's a tool, right? It's a tool that artists have the option to now use, which I think the more tools, the better. That doesn't mean that everyone that uses the tool becomes an artist. I think that just because someone uses paint, they don't become an artist, because someone creates collage with already, like from magazines or anything, they don't immediately become an artist. I think it's more like the purpose, the intent. I think there is where the difference lies, is what is your purpose when using, what is your intention, what is that you're trying to do when using these technologies, is where the difference, for at least for me, and because I know for everyone it's very different, but for me it's more about intention. It's more about the purpose on why you use it, because you can create a video that it can be just a video, or it can be video art, if that's the intention, and who's there to say that it's not or it is. So I think that that's where the difference.
I love this. I just want to quickly add, I get all of the opinions are so valid in this conversation about AI, and I also like what Mimi said about we have to be cautious. For me, it's kind of like I used Midwest the other day, and it kind of takes away my thinking process. Like I'm just trying around things, and if we use the same builders, if we use the same kind of programs to create art, then they can look the same. But again, it takes a person, a real artist, to make it into something special, right? Like it takes a real creative brain to make it into a collection that makes sense, or to display it in a way that is really interesting. So I think this is something I hope we're going to see more of, like this really unique AI art that can really be differentiated from other art, so it doesn't all look the same, or it doesn't all have the same kind of taste.
Yeah, I think it's really intriguing and interesting, and I really agree with you guys' perspective, and it's really nice how we kind of all left it open. We live in a time where we have access to everything because of technology. And I think that sometimes that can retard like innovation, and like Joy said, like repeating or everything looking the same. So hopefully we can, we can think outside the box and, be more creative. And yeah, I think this was great. Thank you guys so much. If you guys don't have any additional comments, I guess we can wrap up now, and it will be nice to maybe hear where we can find you. Joy and I know where we can find you, but maybe the listeners will need that. And if you're working on specific projects and you want to, share it maybe quickly, we can do that. And then, yeah, that'll be amazing.
Thanks so much for having us. I mean, I really enjoyed that. We should all meet in person, I think.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm around.
Yeah.
I'm easy to find. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that is our purpose, to get different perspectives and people together, because I feel like together we can really make a change or think about interesting things more, and really connect different minds and brains to create something unique. So Mimi, where can we find you on Twitter, for example?
I think Twitter is the easiest one. Mimi Nguyen Mimi. That's the easiest one. That's my main social media right now. I converted into Web3.
Amazing. Andrea, what about you?
So mine, it's also very easy. It's just Andrea Steuer in both Instagram or Twitter. I think it has an S at the end. Or at Kadav with Kadav Instagram or Twitter at Kadav_art. And we have a lot of exciting things that are coming up. So we're going to be announcing very soon. And I think it's going to be a good fall season. And it was really a pleasure talking to all of you. Like this is This is wonderful.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Kenny, where we know where we can find you, but I can also
Kenny needs to go.
Instagram and Twitter, you shall find me. Discord if you're hardcore.
Kenny Schachter on Twitter and also his website, and yeah, you probably know. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining today's forum, and if you guys want to get more involved also within our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. We are NEWFORUM_NCO and also newlife.io, and also make sure to follow us on Discord, and don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next panel. And yeah, we can't wait to create more amazing conversations like this one. And thank you to all of the guests joining today and the community.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.